Hey there, welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. Today we're going to build a log holder out of concrete with an optional wood top. It can easily be removed or put back in place to be used as either a shelf or a place to sit.
This project is a lot of fun, and I know it'll look great in your home. So let's get started. The first step is to make the mold for the concrete. Measure and then cut each of the rectangular pieces according to the dimensions given in the plans, which can be found at DIYpete.com/log holder. Use a pencil to mark the measurements and a straight edge to create the straight lines you want to follow along with the circular saw or a table saw. I used about 2/3 of a sheet of 4-foot by 8-foot melamine to create the mold. Next, begin assembling the mold, and we'll create the outside box first. Use the plans to help determine the layout or modify them to customize the size of your concrete log holder. Then use a small bit to pre-drill each hole prior to attaching the boards. Make sure those screws go in straight and not at an angle. This is going to ensure the screw doesn't bust through the white coating or cause a bulge in the mold that the concrete will ultimately form up against. Take your time and continue attaching each of the boards. You'll end up forming a box using 5 pieces with one side of the box open. Next, we'll create the inside portion of the mold, which consists of 3 boards. Drill pocket holes on the inside of each of the side boards and connect them to the back piece using 1 1/4 inch screws. This technique is going to allow us to easily be able to remove the boards from the mold once that concrete has cured. Then test fit the inside portion of the mold to make sure it fits properly and that there is a 1.5 inch gap between the 2 molds for the concrete to flow into. I put some clear packaging tape over the exposed ends of the inside part of the mold so the concrete didn't stick to them. Then put the inside of the mold into place and measure and mark where the molds need to line up to give you the 1.5 inch spacing. Attach the inside of the mold to the outside of the mold by pre-drilling and then attaching it with screws. Take your time with this process and make sure the screws go in as straight as possible. I've been getting a lot of questions and comments asking how other DIYers can start a blog just like I have so they can share their projects and inspire others. So I wanted to quick share that I have a complete step-by-step tutorial on how to start a blog that you can check out by clicking the link in the description below or by simply going to DIYpete.com/start a blog. All right, let's get back to today's project. Now we'll move on to mixing up the concrete to pour it into the mold. Mix water and concrete together according to the manufacturer's instructions. I generally shoot for about a peanut butter consistency, but mix this batch up to between a pancake batter and peanut butter consistency so it would flow a bit easier into the mold. To keep the cost down for this project, I'd recommend using a bag mix like Quikrete 5000, which is about $5 a bag, and my project took about 2.5 bags. Now, I used a combination of Quikrete countertop mix and Quikrete 5000 only because it's what I already had out in the garage. Continue pouring the concrete into the mold and use a putty knife or a shovel to clean up any concrete you missed getting into that channel of the mold. Then vibrate the concrete a few times during the pour to minimize air pockets in the finished piece. You can vibrate it by lifting the entire mold and shaking it up and down, or tapping it with a rubber mallet. I actually like the organic look of some air pockets in pieces like this, so I didn't vibrate the concrete as much as I would with, say, a concrete counter or a concrete table. Continue adding concrete until the mold is full, then level it off with a putty knife or screed it with a board. I've made these successfully without using steel reinforcement, but if you have some thin rebar laying around, feel free to add it to the project. Then do a final leveling of the concrete and let it cure for about 24 to 48 hours. Putting a piece of plastic over the top will help it cure more evenly. Carefully demold the concrete by removing the screws and 1 piece at a time from the outside mold. Then remove the pocket screws from the inside mold and pull out the 2 sides. Lastly, you can lightly pry the lower piece out using a chisel, but never pry against the concrete as you don't want to put any stress on it. Once out of the mold, I set it right side up on a couple wood blocks to continue to let it cure. In the meantime, you can build an optional shelf or a seat for the top of the log holder. I had some hickory boards laying around, and so I cut 3 boards down to size. Then check the boards to make sure they fit correctly and are flush on each side. I attached the 3 boards to a couple boards from the underside to keep them together and also to keep the shelf from sliding within the concrete. Use clamps to hold them together and measure in about 1.5 inches from each side to determine where to put each of the underside boards. Then pre-drill and attach the boards using a combination of wood glue and screws. I used an orbital sander along with 120 and 220 grit sandpaper to quickly round over or smooth the sharp edges and to smooth out the surface of the concrete. Make sure to go outside where there's plenty of ventilation and to wear a mask because it's a real dusty process. You can fill in the air voids or chipped areas using a mixture of Portland cement and water. Simply mix up a small batch to create a paste and then push the paste into the voids or over problem areas to fill them. I really like the natural and organic look of the voids for this specific piece, and so I only filled in a few chipped areas and some of the rough edges. Apply a water-based acrylic concrete sealer as a finish. I brushed it on so I could get the sealer in the voids, and then used a rag to remove excess and to even out the coat. You'll want to apply about 2 to 3 coats, and the sealer dries quickly so the process doesn't take long. I cut 4 feet for the concrete to sit on that are 4-inch by 4-inch squares made out of wood. I used a combination of some quick setting epoxy and a little construction adhesive to hold the feet in place. I clamped them for a few minutes while the epoxy set up, but you could also just rotate the concrete so the bottom side is horizontal, which would make the process quite a bit easier. Lastly, I applied 1 more coat of sealer, did a couple coats of polyurethane on the wood top and feet, and called it good. Alright, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this tutorial, and I hope it inspires you to build your own firewood log holder out of concrete. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. For the complete tutorial and plans, head over to DIYpete.com/log holder. Best of luck with all your projects, and cheers from Montana. I invite you to check out some of the other videos on the channel. Click on the left thumbnail to learn how to build a whiskey barrel coffee table, and on the right thumbnail to learn how to build an outdoor firewood rack, just like the one I built with my dad. And please subscribe. Cheers, guys.